Why are people so intrigued when it comes to the resurrection stories that we hear in the Holy Bible? Is it simply due to such an action representing the ultimate deity function, or perhaps it is our sincere inner desire for validation surrounding both eternal survival of our soul and experiences? In today's video, I'm going to attempt to talk about 3 separate Holy Bible resurrection instances involving an unconscious girl, Jesus' friend Lazarus, and of course the promised resurrection of our Creator Son, Christ Michael. So buckle your seatbelts if you're new to the Urantia Book, because each story will have its own unique surprise in store for you. All right, let's get started. The curing of the unconscious girl. The curing of the unconscious girl during a visit to Capernaum in Mark 5:21-43 is perhaps one of the greatest examples of selective seeing and embellished storytelling that are scattered throughout the Bible. To clarify this point, please bear with me as I provide a few examples here. Especially in the beginning of Jesus' mission, many of Jesus' apostles and disciples both wanted to be reassured of their choice to follow Jesus, and were looking for messianic signs paved by the olden prophets. This was so much of a hindrance of his apostles in 158:2.4 when descending from Mount Hermon after being officially acknowledged as completing his bestowal task by celestial entities. Jesus said,
"You would not receive me as the Son of Man. Therefore, I have consented to be received in accordance with your settled determination."
So in other words, Jesus simply capitulated towards being viewed as the Judaic Messiah. Shortly after, Jesus felt again the need to reinforce what he was attempting to tell his apostles in 158:7.3, indicating,
"You insist on clinging to the belief that I am the Messiah, and you will not abandon the idea that the Messiah must sit upon the throne of Jerusalem. Wherefore, do I persist in telling you that the Son of Man must presently go to Jerusalem, suffer many things, be rejected by the scribes, the elders, and the chief priests, and after all this, be killed and raised from the dead."
Now, in the Urantia Book, this statement of Jesus rising from the dead was one of many. In addition, the fabricated messianic Judaic expectation was for Jesus to be both a warrior and a miracle worker. Once again, Jesus indicated on several occasions that the workings of miracles can actually take away from one's spiritual development through overawing only the material mind and would not reveal God nor save man, located in 136:8.2. Christ's apostles, disciples, and even witnesses were so focused on their own egos being vindicated for everyone else to see that they often exaggerated or mistakenly thought certain afflictions or miracles Jesus performed were more significant than they actually were. The Urantia Book teaches us that one of the many reasons why Jesus frequently told individuals,
"Tell no one,"
after performing a miracle was to focus on exalting one's faith towards God rather than exalting the healer themselves. As a great example, there's the incident of the demon-infested child, where both Judas Iscariot and Simon Zelotes vainly thought they could heal the boy. And in 158:5.2, with Jesus eventually explaining that it was simply due to their lack of faith that led to such miracles not being performed. Jesus later expands on this concept in 158:6.3, stating,
"Spiritual greatness consists in an understanding love that is godlike and not in the enjoyment of the exercise of material power for the exaltation of self. In what you attempted, in which you so completely failed, your purpose was not pure. Your motive was not divine. Your ideal was not spiritual. Your ambition was not altruistic. Your procedure was not based on love, and your goal of attainment was not the will of the Father in heaven."
All right, well, let's bridge some of these concepts of distortions onto the unconscious girl narrative. All right, here we go. In the Capernaum girl story, Jesus was approached by Jairus, a synagogue official whose daughter was supposedly gravely ill in 152:1.1. On the way to Jairus' house, Jesus was delayed by the healing of a woman with chronic bleeding. By the time Christ Michael finally arrived, the girl had been perceived by the staff as already being dead, with the flute players already playing their grievance tune. After entering the house, Jesus said,
"Your daughter is not dead. She is only asleep,"
challenging the mourners' solidified predisposition. In the original Bible, sleep is often synonymous with death, with my perception being that many witnesses to this event simply thought Jesus was referring to the transient state of death, rather than taking Jesus literally, with the girl simply being unconscious. Christ Michael entered the room with only the parents and 3 apostles attending, took the girl's hand and said,
"Daughter, I say to you, awake and arise."
She awoke immediately, and Jesus instructed that she be given food, emphasizing that she had not eaten in quite some time. In actuality, we find out in 152 1.2 that the girl had fallen into a coma after a long fever, and all Jesus did was to merely arouse her. Ironically, we end this story with Jesus' directive of telling no man what had transpired in that house. But I bet you already know that most of the apostles didn't keep their end of the bargain, found in Mark, Matthew, and of course Luke. The raising of Lazarus. The Lazarus story, on the other hand, was no exaggeration or a story of embellishment in the Bible, with the exception of Jesus performing the task on his own. Lazarus was Jesus' longtime friend. Many a time did Jesus seek sustenance from Lazarus' family and was never turned away during his many travels. 4 days after Lazarus had died and was laid in the family tomb, Jesus arrived in Bethany. Lazarus' sister, Martha, met him first, expressing a statement of frustration, indicating if Jesus had been there earlier, that her brother would not have passed away. She felt uneasy with a statement that Jesus had made previously to a runner, indicating in 168.0.3 that
"This sickness is really not to the death."
once Jesus arrived, he was overwhelmed by both emotions, likely due to Martha and Mary's presented pain, the insincere mourners, of which many were his enemy, and of course the scrutiny Lazarus would go through in the future, being the greatest exemplification of Christ Michael's divinity and power. Consequently, Jesus wept at the tomb, moved by genuine sympathy and the emotional tension of the given moment. Fun fact for those of you that believe in either destiny or the artificial construct of time and space, the messenger had told Jesus that Lazarus was ill on Sunday. And when Christ Michael arrived, Jesus was not sure where Lazarus' body had been laid, utilizing only his material mind. However, Jesus' personalized thought adjuster issued orders for the indefinite detention of Lazarus' thought adjuster on the planet 15 minutes prior to Lazarus breathing his last breath. In other words, it is easy to speculate that God knew what his son was going to do ahead of time. After Jesus gave the order of
"Take away the stone,"
in 168.1.11, Michael's celestial associates likely went to work, since a material versus Urantia resurrection takes more celestial personalities to reassemble a deceased material body. Again, unlike the next resurrection story we'll be discussing, Lazarus was a material resurrection and was not the same process as Jesus Christ Michael. It was a misnomer during that time that a spirit might linger around a tomb until the 3rd day, seeking to reanimate the deceased body, and on the 4th day that the soul had gone to its final resting place. Consequently, it may not be a coincidence that this miracle was performed on the 4th day of Lazarus' death in order to solidify Jesus' restorative power. Now, whether Jesus knew about this ahead of time or whether it was predetermined by God that his son would act in such a capacity, I'll leave that up to you. The orchestrated restoration was overseen by Jesus' son Gabriel, that was executed upon hearing the following words from his creator father in 168.2.2.
"Father, I am thankful that you heard and granted my request. I know that you always hear me, but because of those who stand here with me, I thus speak with you, that they may believe that you have sent me into the world, and that they may know that you are working with me in that which we are about to do."
And when he had prayed, he cried with a loud voice,
"Lazarus, come forth."
12 seconds later, I'm guessing you know what happens next. All right, let's move on to Christ Michael's final restorative action, discussing his own resurrection. All right, here we go. The resurrection of Jesus. Throughout the Urantia Book, Jesus has been quoted as foretelling his own death on at least 6 separate occasions. Christ Michael's uncontested testimony to this effect can be found after Michael's conference with Gabriel and Father Melchizedek that was mistaken for Moses and Elijah in 158.2.1 on Mount Hermon, when Jesus said to his 3 attending apostles,
Make certain that you tell no man, not even your brethren, what you have seen and heard on this mountain until the Son of Man has risen from the dead.
We learn in 189.0.1 that with the exception of perhaps his son Gabriel, that none of his celestial counterparts knew how exactly they were going to resurrect Jesus after his death, with Gabriel indicating that Michael
laid down his life of his own free will. He also had the power to take it up again in accordance with his own determination.
Shortly after this meeting of life carriers, archangels, and other entities, Michael's once thought adjuster indicated that no one should assist Christ Michael in the return to life, and that this transition will be into the realm of the Urantia form, choosing a temporary sojourn like all spirit creatures. So in other words, this personalized thought adjuster indicated that Christ Michael wanted the whole and complete human death experience and consequently chose to arise once more in a Urantia form, likely symbolizing what we should expect in the next world. For those of you that are unaware what the Urantia form is, think of our souls as consisting of a nearly indestructible material. This material is more frequently used on future planets that most of us will eventually traverse. As we leave this material world slowly behind, traversing higher realms of spiritual existence. In 189.1.1, things get a little interesting when at 2:25 a.m. on Sunday, a Paradise Incarnation Commission arrived consisting of 7 unidentified Paradise personalities. At 2:50 a.m., April the 9th, 30 AD, the resurrected Jesus of Nazareth came forth in Urantia form out of his tomb. Like stated previously, his body in which he was walking around in is that same material that we're going to see on the next Urantia planet. In 189.2.1, it is written that
at 10 minutes past 3 o'clock, as the resurrected Jesus fraternized with his assembled Urantia personalities from the 7 mansion worlds of Satania, the chief of the archangels, the angels of the resurrection, approached Gabriel and asked for the mortal body of Jesus.
The archangel then indicated that they proposed that the body of Jesus be immediately destroyed, simply recommending the decomposition of accelerated time for the desired outcome. Fun fact, that was the only reason why there was no physical body remaining in Jesus' tomb. Christ Michael did not physically escape the tomb. Simply his body returned to the elements from whence it came, invoking the process of accelerated time on the body decomposition in his isolated chamber. The stone being rolled away was the work of midwayers, who consequently scared both the Roman soldiers and the Jewish guards. That transpired only after Jesus' body was completely gone. Consequently, the natural remains of Jesus went through the same natural disintegration as any deceased material body located in 189.2.8. Well, that's all I have for today's episode. Thank you again for watching, your continued support, and I'll see you on the next one.